I'm Alice, and let me tell you about the night they tried to humiliate me again. They called me the useless one, just like they always did. But this time they had no idea who I really was. When my sister's boyfriend stood up, looked me straight in the eye, and asked, "Boss, what are you doing here?" The entire table froze. Want to know what happened next? Grab your coffee, sit back, and come with me. Because they thought they were going to embarrass me. But instead they exposed themselves. "You're useless." That was the first thing I remember hearing from them the day I said I wanted to go to college. I was just 17, already carrying the label they'd slapped on me, and they never let it go. That afternoon, we were all in the kitchen, my mom cooking quietly while my siblings laughed, as usual at my expense. I was the youngest, the one who loved to study, to read, to imagine a different future. They, so busy and full of real responsibilities, always said I was living in a fantasy world. While we're working, she's off dreaming. And I just kept my head down, pretending not to hear. I learned early on that in that house, silence was my best defense. "You'll just end up depending on a man," they'd say, laughing like it was some inevitable sentence. And I'd clench my teeth, holding back the tears. Every victory I had, an award at school, a college scholarship, was dismissed with the same contempt. What's the point? You'll never get a real job anyway. The simple fact that I loved studying seemed to bother them deeply. When I got married at 21, I overheard my brother whisper to my sister, "See? She ran away, found someone to pay her bills." They didn't even bother wishing me happiness. On the most important day of my life, I left my parents' house carrying more than just my bags. I carried the weight of their doubt, their judgment, and their words that cut deeper than I ever admitted. Moving to a new city was like shedding my old skin. The physical distance only widened the emotional gap. The calls became rare, the messages disappeared, and I didn't force it. I needed that space. I needed to escape that environment where every word was a veiled attack, every family gathering an opportunity to tear me down. While I quietly built my life with my husband, they stayed at my parents' house. My sister, always the competitive one, landed a good job and made sure everyone knew, like she was showing off a trophy. "Look how successful I am, unlike our little useless sister." Her voice echoed even when I wasn't around to hear it. My brother settled down too, and over time, just got even more arrogant. For them, every personal achievement was another chance to reinforce their story about me. I was the one who gave up, who got married to be taken care of, who disappeared. They kept feeding that frozen version of me, like I'd been stuck in time, like I could never be anything else. But while they clung to that illusion, I was quietly becoming the woman I had always wanted to be. No fanfare, no social media post, no calls to brag. Not because I was better, but because, honestly, I didn't need to. I had learned to value silence, freedom, and the peace that comes from not having to prove anything to people who never really cared to know me. They never knew. They never asked. They never wanted to know. And I never felt the need to tell them. But the irony? While they kept clinging to the image of me as the useless one, I was becoming exactly what they never imagined. And now they were about to find out. The hard way. 10 years. That's how long I stayed away from them. 10 years of silence, of safe distance, of freedom. Until one random morning my phone buzzed. It was a message from my sister. "Hey, we're planning a family dinner. Can you come?" The message was followed by a forced smile emoji. I read it and closed my eyes for a second. I knew her far too well to believe that this was some kind of heartfelt invitation. I replied with a simple, "Sure." That's it. But before I even hit send, I already knew this wasn't about affection. Right after, she added, "I want to introduce you to my boyfriend. He's a manager at the company I'm working for." There it was. The real reason. It wasn't about me. It never was. It was about her. About the new boyfriend, the job title, her successful phase, and, of course, about reminding me of the role they always wanted me to play, the useless one in the family. The script was obvious. She wanted me to sit there, listening to her talk about her career, about how she had made it, about the successful man by her side. She wanted to see me sitting quietly while she showed off. She wanted me to confirm with my silence that I had stayed exactly what they always said I'd be, a mistake, a failure, someone who ran away and never found her way back. My brother, of course, would be there too. I didn't doubt it for a second. He never misses these kinds of opportunities. I bet he was already looking forward to throwing out his usual sharp comments, reinforcing, in front of everyone, that I'm still the useless one in the family. He probably imagined that, after all this time, I had settled even more, that I was still depending on my husband, just like they always predicted. I told my husband about the invitation, and he just smiled calmly. Go. Go, see how far they're willing to go. I laughed too. He knew, just like I did, exactly what they were about to find out. But this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about rubbing anything in their faces. It was about closing a chapter, maybe. Or, who knows, letting life show them, in its perfectly ironic way, who I had become. I accepted the invitation with the same quiet elegance that's always been mine. No sarcasm, no resentment. Just the calm confidence of someone who knows her own story. I knew that night would be significant, but not because of them. It would be significant because, for the first time, they were going to see me for who I really am, not who they always wanted me to be. On the day of the dinner, I chose a simple dress. Nothing extravagant. No jewelry, no fancy watch. No status symbols that could give me away. I wanted them to recognize me first by my presence, by the respect I commanded naturally, not by the accessories that, in their minds, define who's successful and who isn't. I got ready like I get ready to make a cup of coffee, with ease, without rehearsing. Before leaving, I adjusted the rearview mirror and looked at myself. I didn't see the timid girl I used to be. I didn't see the useless one they always described. I saw a woman who was whole, accomplished, confident, and, above all, discreet. They still thought I was that girl they once dismissed, the one who ran away to be taken care of. They had no idea what was coming. I drove to the restaurant with the lightness of someone who no longer has anything to prove. I wasn't going there to compete. I wasn't going there to get revenge. I was going there to take my place, to let life do what life does best, show them, with all its silent force, who I really am. And without them even realizing, something much bigger was about to happen. That night, they were about to learn something the hard way. Underestimating someone might just be the biggest mistake you can make. I walked into the restaurant with steady steps, the sound of my heels muffled by the elegant carpet. From a distance, I could already see them at the table. My brother was gesturing animatedly, laughing loudly. My sister wore that smug smile, the one she always had when she was about to show off a trophy. They looked relaxed, comfortable, living yet another one of those nights where they reinforced the same old narrative. They had won. And I was still the useless one. I didn't even need to get close to hear my brother blurt out, loud and without a shred of shame, "Look who it is! Here comes the useless one of the family." The words sliced through the air like a blade. A few people turned to look at me, maybe expecting some kind of reaction. But I just smiled discreetly like someone hearing the same tired joke for the 1,000th time. Nothing he said could get to me anymore. Not anymore. My sister let out a little laugh, too, without even bothering to look me in the eyes. She just squeezed her boyfriend's hand, flashing her shiny engagement ring, like she wanted to make it perfectly clear that she was in a new phase of life, a phase of victories, of achievements, of superiority. It had always been like that. When they couldn't bring me down with words, they used symbols, silent trophies to reinforce the role they wanted me to play. The atmosphere was the same as always. Snobbish, venomous, arrogant. Every word carefully chosen to shove me, once again, into my rightful place. For a second, I thought about how nothing had changed, how time hadn't taught them a single thing, how they were still trapped in that childish need to feel superior by putting someone else down. I took a deep breath and walked to the table. No rush, like someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. My sister wasted no time. As soon as I sat down, she blurted out, "I'm working at XYZ now, did you know?" She threw me a triumphant look, like she was waiting for applause. Great salary, amazing career path. Finally, I'm where I've always wanted to be. She spoke with that meticulously calculated tone, designed so that every word sounded like a personal victory, and at the same time a silent defeat for me. I just nodded without interrupting. Then, of course, she made sure to bring up her boyfriend, squeezing his hand even tighter, as if she was holding up a prize. This, right here, is the manager of my department. She smiled proudly. An incredible man, super successful, can you imagine? Manager at one of the biggest companies in the industry. My brother chimed in with his usual precision. She knows how to pick him, right? She's not going to end up with just anyone like some people we know. He shot me that venomous smile I knew far too well. And me? I just smiled again. I listened in silence. No rush, no need to justify myself, no urge to compete over who had the bigger title or fatter paycheck. I let them dig their own hole, feeding the illusion that they were perched at the top of the food chain, while I, in their eyes, was still that lost sister, the one who only showed up to confirm their old story. They kept talking and talking and talking. My brother bragging about his accomplishments. My sister listing her perks and achievements. And me? I just watched them, like someone watching an old play, already knowing every line, every gesture, every look. And then, right in the middle of one of their monologues, when I was almost starting to enjoy the absurdity of it all, my sister's boyfriend, who had been quiet until then, looked at me, and in that instant, everything began to change. His eyes widened, like he was seeing something he hadn't expected. He furrowed his brow, confused, then broke into a smile, half in disbelief, half in admiration. Before I could even process what he was about to say, he turned to my sister and asked, with a tone of surprise, almost disbelief, "What's the CEO doing here?" The silence that followed was so thick for a second, it felt like even breathing had stopped. And me? I just stayed right there, calm, like someone who knows exactly what's about to happen. My sister's boyfriend looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. His eyes wide, his breath caught, his body leaning slightly forward, like he needed to make sure he was really seeing what he thought he was seeing. And then, unable to hold it back, he blurted out, "What's the CEO doing here?" It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't a joke. It was genuine surprise, mixed with respect. My sister let out a nervous laugh, glancing from me to him, then back to me again, as if desperately trying to find some logic in the scene. "CEO? Her? Impossible," she said, with that same mocking tone she'd always used to put me down. She scanned me from head to toe, searching for anything that might contradict her boyfriend's surprise. She found nothing. Just me, calm, composed, undeniable. But to everyone's surprise except mine, he stood up. With a spontaneous gesture, completely ignoring all the silent family codes, he walked over to me, smiled warmly with genuine admiration, and extended his hand. "Doctor, it's a pleasure to see you again." He shook my hand firmly, respectfully, like someone greeting not just a colleague, but a role model. My sister? She was left speechless. Literally. She didn't even blink. Then he turned to everyone at the table and said, as naturally as if he were stating the weather, "This is my boss, the CEO of the group." The silence that followed landed on the table like a bomb. Heavy, almost tangible. It felt like the entire restaurant had stopped just to watch that moment. My brother's eyes went wide. My sister frozen. And me? I took a deep breath, keeping that same calm smile of someone who always knew this moment was coming. My sister couldn't react. She tried to process it, but the gears inside her seemed completely jammed. Her expression shifted from confusion to silent panic in seconds. Up until that moment, she had been perfectly comfortable in her role, the successful one, the winner of the family. But now everything was crumbling, all because of one simple greeting, one she never imagined I would receive, especially not from the man sitting right next to her. My brother furrowed his brow, crossed his arms, and gave me that typical look, the one that says, "I don't buy it," the one that thinks this must be some kind of act. His pride, a wall far too high to let reality in easily. So he just stood there, mute, frozen in his own disbelief. And me? I smiled calmly and offered my hand to my new brother-in-law. Polite, professional, serene. There was no need to say anything. My presence, my posture, the way he greeted me, it all spoke for itself. And for the first time in years, I felt exactly where I had always wanted to be. in control of my own story, without having to prove anything to anyone. My sister still tried to laugh. That forced laugh, the one people use when they're desperate to mock, to believe that maybe, just maybe if they laugh it won't be true. But her laugh, it died in her throat. The moment she saw the sincere, admiring look her boyfriend gave me, she knew. He wasn't joking. There was no misunderstanding. He knew exactly who I was. And now, so did they. The silence between them screamed louder than any insult they had ever thrown at me, while they all sat there, paralyzed in disbelief. I just sat down, crossed my legs with elegance, and asked the waiter politely, "A glass of water, please." I didn't need anything else at that moment. No need to show off. No need to explain. Life had already done that for me, with a clarity and power no words could ever match. And that dinner, the one that had started as a trap to humiliate me, had already transformed into the most unlikely and the most satisfying scene of all. My sister was the first to break the silence, but her voice came out weak, almost a whisper. "But you? How?" She forced a nervous laugh, like someone trying to turn disbelief into mockery. She looked me up and down, desperately searching for any clue that could disprove what she'd just heard. But she found nothing, just my calm, steady, unshakable gaze. She couldn't hold back and blurted out, almost as an accusation, "I've never seen you at the company." The tone was thick with contempt, as if my physical absence somehow proved that all of this was just a mistake. But before I could even think about answering, he, her boyfriend, now my accidental defender, stepped forward with that same relaxed, almost admiring smile. "She founded 3 companies." He said it, looking her directly in the eyes without hesitation. 3. He made sure to repeat it, like he wanted her to feel the full weight of that word. And she put managers in charge of each one. All we do is send reports, analyses, updates. The entire operation runs under her direction. My sister's eyes widened, clearly struggling to process every single syllable. But he didn't stop. He kept going, giving her no space to recover. She leads meetings online, coordinates everything remotely, defines strategies, approves major decisions. He said it all so naturally, like he didn't even notice the absolute destruction his words were causing. And me? I just sat there in silence, watching my sister slowly crumble from the inside out. Every word he spoke tore down a piece of the arrogant fortress she had spent years building. And before anyone could even take a breath, he added, almost as an afterthought, "And her husband's an entrepreneur too. He started 2 other companies and runs 5 branches." Then he looked at me and smiled, like someone offering congratulations. "They're inspiring. A couple that built everything with intelligence, vision, and freedom." My sister swallowed hard, clutching her napkin so tightly her knuckles turned white. This was not even close, part of her plan. My brother, who had been completely silent until now, started changing color. His face, once flushed with arrogance, began to pale, then turned pink, and finally settled into some strange, undefinable shade between disbelief and shame. He didn't say a word. No joke. No jab. He just stared at me, silent, his eyes heavy, like someone who, for the very first time, was finally seeing what he had always refused to acknowledge. My sister, desperately trying to hold on to some shred of composure, crossed her arms and forced out a smile. "Wow, that's different." Her usual passive-aggressive tone, her signature move, failed her completely. She tried glancing at her boyfriend, looking for some kind of support, but he just smiled back, admiring, completely oblivious to the silent game that had always existed between us. And me? I stayed right where I was, unmoved, with the same quiet elegance that's always been my signature. There was no need to puff up my chest, no need for some clever one-liner. Life had already spoken for me, with a force and finality that no speech could ever match. In just a few minutes, that entire structure of arrogance and contempt they'd maintained for years simply collapsed. My sister kept fidgeting with her hair, adjusting her blouse, smiling that fake, strained smile. But she couldn't hide her eyes. They burned with rage. And me? I just watched, because for the very first time, I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to justify myself. I didn't need to explain who I was. They simply saw, before the dinner could officially end, when the discomfort was already almost unbearable. He dropped one more, so casually, so effortlessly, like he was just sharing an interesting fact, completely unaware that he was about to drive the final nail into their pride. By the way, the company only survived thanks to the angel investor. He said it while calmly taking a sip of water, as if he hadn't just detonated a bomb right in the middle of the table. My sister furrowed her brow, tense. Who? She asked, her voice lower now, almost wavering, like she already suspected the answer, but needed to hear it, or maybe needed it to break her completely. Her hand was gripping the napkin so hard, it looked like it might tear at any second. My brother stayed silent, just staring at his plate, defeated. Without hesitation, he pointed straight at me. Her. Simple. Direct. Final. The silence that followed was heavier than any that had come before. My sister's expression vanished completely. It was like the world had just collapsed right on top of her. She tried to say something, but nothing came out. My brother let out a long sigh, lowered his eyes, and shook his head, beaten. Right there in that moment, I watched everything fall apart, without having to lift a finger. No need to raise my voice. No need to justify myself. Just being who I've always been. No makeup. No performance. No effort. Just me. I stood up slowly, adjusted my bag on my shoulder, looked at them. My sister frozen. My brother drowning in shame. Then, without rushing, without raising my tone, I simply said, "It was always easier for you to just call me useless." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. They had nothing, just the silence and the shame. I turned around and walked toward the exit, the sound of my heels steady against the cold floor, the weight of their silence behind me, paralyzed, broken, for the first time. No snide remark, no criticism, no attack, just emptiness, while I walked away, head held high, with my dignity intact, and that quiet victory they never believed I could achieve. Outside, I took a deep breath. The night air filled my lungs, like it was sealing an old freedom, finally reclaimed. I didn't need to list my accomplishments, didn't need to flash numbers or trophies. Life had already told my story. They lost, and they know it. They lost the game, and they lost the right to define me. As I walked down the street, I could still faintly hear the muted clinking of silverware and voices from inside, but none of them belonged to my siblings. They were still there, trapped in their shame, their silence, their shattered pride. My phone buzzed. Did everything go well? My husband. I smiled. Didn't even need to answer. I won, without ever raising my voice. I won, just by being who I am. And deep down, maybe that's the most beautiful kind of victory. The one you don't shout about. You don't show off. You don't impose. You just live it, with the ease of someone who no longer needs to prove anything. And with the certainty that now, they know exactly who I am. Finally, they know. Did you like this story? Then you need to see the next one. They called me selfish. After I paid all my parents' bills, and then they broke the only deal we had. It's right here on the screen. Click it, and come with me to another story about someone who gave everything and got nothing in return.